Establishing the actual number of out-of-school children in Nigeria is a tall order. Contentions trail the total tally of children that either have never been in school, can't go to school, or dropped out of school. The United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, reports over 20 million. Nigerian government disputes this figure and has pushed back against the UN Education Organization, insisting on slightly above 10 million as the number of out-of-school children in the country.
The 20 million out-of-school children we are quoting is not even the true reflection of the number of out-of-school children. They are glaring at us in our communities, in our streets. If we do proper research, I bet you will have more than that. Although the government is denying that we don't have that number. We are using the UNESCO number. Okay, even if you are saying it's 10.6, a country like Nigeria, that is the giant of Africa, are we supposed to have up to 10.6 million out-of-school children? Even if a child is out of school, is a concern to a country.
The figure being pushed by the government in terms of out-of-school children, OSC, in the country was generated by the Universal Basic Education Commission, UBEC, which questions how UNESCO arrived at its own figure. According to UNESCO, its data is based on those aged 6 to 18 years, ranging from primary 1 to senior secondary school 3, while UBEC's figure is related to those aged 6 to 11. UBEC further insists that out-of-school children from ages 6 to 11 decreased from 10.2 to 9.6 million between 2018 and 2021 and were projected to reduce further to 9.5 million as of 2022.
None of these figures is accurate. The government own and the UNESCO own. The real figures, the figure will be around 30 to 40 million. Maybe they have not taken cognizance of the settlements outside of towns where they have not yet visited. They have not taken into consideration the settlements where there are IDPs. They have not taken settlements where there are no schools to even have the statistic of those people that are not going to school. So there is no accuracy to all these numbers attributed to either the government or UNESCO. The situation is beyond that. The government is playing around political correctness, and they know it.
Indicators express that Nigeria is experiencing what has been termed learning poverty, where, according to the World Bank, about 70% of 10-year-olds cannot understand a simple sentence or perform basic proficiency tasks. The Federal Capital Territory has its share of the out-of-school children, OSC. The United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, says 10 states, including the FCT, have 8 million out-of-school children. Records show the FCT has some 121,587 children out of school. While this figure is among states said to be with the lowest number of out-of-school children, it still ranks high compared with those in the same bracket, such as Edo, 76,446, Abia, 86,124, Bayelsa, 86,124, Anambra, 92,332, Ekiti, 99,778, Ondo, 113,746, and Enugu, 117,091. Others are Imo with 125,414, Cross River 140,944, Kwara 141,944, 325, Ebonyi 151,000, and Ogun 158,797. Global Data Lab provides further insight into the profile of children in school within the spread of the FCT, an area with a projected 3,839,646 population as of 2022. Children of 14 years and below make 38.1% of the population, numbering 535,526. 98.8% of children aged 6 to 8 attend school, 93.8% of those aged 9 to 11, and 87.9% of 12 to 15, while 77.4% of those 15 to 17 are in school. It seems as they grow, the number of those in school drop, such that only 37% aged 18 to 20 are in school in the FCT.
We have begun to see increase in this number of children who are not going to school within the Federal Capital Territory, and it's really embarrassing. Imagine this is where the president is, this is where the Minister of Education is, this is where the National Assembly member is, our diplomatic communities are in Abuja, and yet we see a lot of children on traffic situation, claiming, begging, it's really embarrassing, and it really calls for real action on the part of the government. This cannot continue. There are security threats. They are being exposed in the manner that they should not be exposed to as children. And the fact that they are still on the streets every day, we walk past them, it's really disturbing, and it dehumanizes us.
The FCT is taking over Kano and Kaduna. It's a terrible situation, and insecurity is going to worsen up until and unless a drastic measure is taken.
What is also a cause for worry is that Nigeria is far short of UN recommendation that countries spend 25% of their national budget on education. For Nigeria, the figure as of 2018 was 7.1% and has not improved since then till date. According to Save the Children, education funding cuts and rising poverty force millions of children out of school. A joint report by the UNESCO Institute and UNICEF notes that 2/3 of children in the poorest households in Nigeria are not in school, and almost 90% of them may never enroll. In contrast, only 5% of the richest children are out of school, and most of them are expected to start in the future. Therefore, the out-of-school menace is skewed against the poor, and this is part of the profile of the out-of-school children in the FCT.
Me ka baka zo makaranta? Babu kuɗi. Wai ogonku ita ce? Tare kuke? Yayanku ne? Aba. Me yasa baka zo makaranta?
Alhaji baban mu ba da ya ma rasu.
Ya rasu? To yanzu me kuke a nan?
Abinda za mu ci ne.
The bigger consequence is that the nation is unable to tap from one of the prime benefits of an educated and literate society. This viewpoint springs from the position of experts who say education is a social establishment that bridges the gap in society with substantial knowledge, including skills, cultural norms and values, and basic facts. A society that strives for the right path towards development must place premium on education through good and functional schools and educational institutions. Further, education benefits society by enabling improved personal life for individuals and aids the smooth functioning of the structures and institutions of society. The prevailing incidence of out-of-school children suggests that these goals are being defeated.
We should be ashamed, we should be embarrassed to have more than 10 million of our children who are not in school. It's something that has very, very negative impact to our socio-economic development as a country. It has multiple implications: security implication, developmental implication, and any other implication you can think about. For for the children themselves, you are denying them of hopes for the future. You know, you are not giving them the opportunity to be able to aspire when they grow up. So the issue of out-of-school children is very alarming, and it's something that as a country we must take a very serious position and action to address it. It's increasing instead of reducing, and that's unacceptable.
Factors that account for the number of out-of-school children in Nigeria include population increase without expansion of educational facilities, withdrawal of girls for early marriage, the Almajiri phenomenon, nomadic pastoralism, migrant fishermen, dropout rate, and insecurity. These factors also apply to the FCT, but an equally critical reason is that parents cannot meet the financial obligations. Poverty is thus a major problem for children being out of school. Due to poverty, the risk is higher that some children will never start school, and those that eventually do have the tendencies of dropping out of school.
The build-up that you find either on the streets or even in communities of out-of-school children comes from the fact that it has become an easy getaway for some parents.
The government is not doing anything. Parents are not doing anything. Societies that ought to develop a serious concern are not doing anything either. So the situation is really escalating, and we are headed to a serious situation that are pretty unpredictable.
The responsibility of education is the responsibility of everyone, but government has a serious role to play.
Well, the parents can come in, but it is less about the parents, but more about people we have sent to represent us.
Ilimi shine ginshikin ci gaban kowace irin al'umma. Wane irin kima ne hukumar gudanarwa na birnin tarayya ta baiwa ilimi? Kasafin nawa ne aka ware wa bangaren ilimi? Ta yaya ake amfani da waɗannan kuɗaɗen da aka ware wa ilimi? Menene matsayin ingancin malamai da ɗalibai da waɗanda suka kammala manyan makarantu da kuma su kansu makarantun da ake gudanar da harkokin koyo da koyarwa? Domin samun amsoshi, kasance tare da Leaves and Worms a cikin shirin baje koli da faɗakarwa wanda ake gabatarwa a kowane mako a tashar AD4 TV Radio, wanda cibiyar Wole Soyinka Center for Investigative Journalism tare da haɗin gwiwar gidauniyar MacArthur Foundation suka ɗauki nauyi. A kasance tare da shirin.
The out-of-school children in the FCT project a paradox of a sort.
The problems with the states bordering Abuja, where those state governments are not giving priority to education, has caused parents in those states to send their kids to school in Abuja. Do you know that there are parents that live in Suleja who come into the city with their kids? They come to school, they bring the kids to school in Abuja. So the facilities are overstretched. When you go to Abaji, bordering Kogi State, you know the issues in Kogi. For a whole year, schools will be closed. Parents those that are living in the neighboring towns opt to bring their kids to school in Abaji. The same thing with Buhari and many other, area councils that are bordering the states. So I do understand with them that the facilities are overstretched. There's a high demand. People are trooping into the city. I'm worried about that, and I know that
but why is that a reason for this for Abuja to have the quantum of out-of-school children within its domain?
From research, from findings, from studies we did, the insecurity in the country, especially like Goza, has affected, has sent in a very high influx of people from those parts of the country. There are many people from Goza. You go to Area 1, you see a community, they call it Goza community. People from Goza that escaped Boko Haram. The same thing Yobe, the same thing in Kaduna, the bandits here in Niger State. People feel Abuja is a safe haven. So we have a very, very large community of IDPs who form a large number of these out of school.
Despite being within the vicinity of the uplands of the Federal Capital Territory, which post a total of combined private and public schools, a sizable number of children are shut out of school, with parents and guardians preferring to keep them on small holding farms in the suburbs. In rural FCT, Some parents tend to believe that children are more useful to them at home and on the farm than in school. In many instances, children have to engage in some economic activities in order to feed themselves and to finance their education by themselves. In the course of this investigation, it was discovered that children pay 100 naira a day to come to school. At 100 naira a day, they get books, uniforms, lunch, and the girls get sanitary pads every month, and they get STEM-based education. If you put 100 naira for a term, it's about 6,000 naira, but 6,000 naira cannot provide all that for a child or a family. It's actually 66,000 naira a term. Many parents can't afford this amount. Economic circumstances of parents that make it difficult for them to bear the cost of the education of their wards should not have been any cause for concern, given that extant laws and existing policies provide for free education. That is, the parents should not have been allowed to bear many aspects of the cost of children's education. However, this policy is not adequately implemented. Same inefficiencies affect several other initiatives to drive down the number of out-of-school children. Here, not much is recorded in terms of the impact of the government's decision to spend 1 billion naira, which is $2.3 million, on feeding school pupils on a daily basis through a homegrown school feeding program to boost enrollment in schools. The government, through a strategic document launched in 2018, had expressed readiness to recover 70% of children who had dropped out of school. It promised to double primary school enrollment from 46 to 90% and double both female and secondary school completion rate from 42 to 80%. These have not happened. Even the introduction of better education service delivery for all, BESDA, targeted at reducing number of out-of-school children, seem not to have reduced the figures. Likewise, $611 million credit facility secured in 2022 from the World Bank to boost basic education in 17 states, including the FCT, did not drop the tally of children out of school. Many also point to the current scenario of underinvestment in education sector generally, made worse by corruption, created in contexts in which children are kept out of school, including in the FCT as in other parts of the country. At the time Leaves and Worms was following up on these reports, public primary schools in Abuja were on shut as teachers all over the Federal Capital Territory stay at home on strike, protesting non-payment of their earned allowances due for over 9 months since the beginning of the year.
You are sitting up there, your 1 month allowance can even pay all these teachers. And you feel that these teachers don't deserve their wages. If they know that these children that are being left at home, that tomorrow will haunt them, they will do the needful. So in this case, you don't blame the teachers. The teachers need to be paid for them to go back to school.
Zariu Yusuf, a frontline activist of the New Nigerian movement and spokesman of the Big Tent and Advocacy for Good Governance, raises another dimension that suggests that the issues around out-of-school children is a ploy by vested interest to engage in veiled and diversionary corrupt practice.
When you have an issue that should be put to an end, but rather you discover the politicians are trying to create a scenario of managing it. It is not motivated for the benefit of the people. It is motivated for gain making. An example is, why should anybody propose a ministry for repentant terrorists? Will we continue giving birth to them? Why should anybody create a ministry for the, for instance, maybe say for the counseling of rapists? Should we not deal with them? Should we not put a deterrent to it and all of that? So basically that is what I see our politicians doing. There are some of them that quickly drag religion into the matter. They drag culture into the matter. And it is not true. It's not religious. It's not cultural. It's just easier to use religion and culture to perpetuate it. And at the end of the day, unless what they want is done, you will keep having these children on the street. An example, you would hear people proposing commission for out-of-school children, this for this and all of that. And we know quite well when you put in 100 million, somebody will have a way of channeling 70, 80 or 90, only to end up using 10 to just create the media stuff. So it is looking, what I fear is it might grow to become a very lucrative enterprise. Yes, I see it more as a means of, they see that mass number as possibly a potential means of making gain.
Corruption reduces and denies access to education from preschool to university. It creates low-quality learning environment where the poor suffer the most and undermines collective welfare. Mohammed Sabo Keina of the Almajiri Child Rights Initiative, ACRI, an advocacy and support platform that holds government accountable on the issue of out-of-school children, says the corruption is playing a large role in keeping Nigerian children out of school. There are lots of children who wish to go to school. The whole education system is in a state of collapse. Besides that, we have the highest out-of-school children in the world. We are also having an education crisis.
We cannot continue to apply the same method years over a year after. Unless we change our approach to address the situation, we will not get it right, and whatever, and UNICEF and UNESCO cannot do anything. So unless until we address the situation from the root cause, then we can be able to see the impact of UNICEF and UNESCO. So I think it's left for the government to be more transparent, to be more decisive on their action in addressing the out-of-school children, especially the one that relates to the Almajiri children.
Corruption, among other factors, is the reason for the increase in the number of out-of-school children. When a governor keeps hundreds of millions as security votes, what is he using it for, unaccounted? That money can be channeled to education. There are allegations that providers of education services are presented with routine opportunities to demand and expect bribes from parents and other service users. Petty bribery in schools to secure admission for children, as has been reported among public, primary and secondary schools in Abuja, is a huge disincentive to parents who may want to use such excuse not to put their children in school. The Universal Basic Education Board and the FCT is talking about invoking the sanctions in the Universal Basic Education Act against parents who keep their children out of school within the territory.
The basic education, as far as we are concerned, is a right of the child, and it is compulsory. In fact, we are thinking of even going further step now to start handling parents that actually depriving their children from accessing basic education, because we are planning to see how we are going to reduce incidences of out-of-school children, because some of the blames are on the parents, and there are penalties for refusing your word from attending basic education as far as UB Act is concerned. But we started by studying the communities, trying to massage their ego to enable them, allow these children be a better citizen by letting them go to schools, because our free society today, our comfort society tomorrow, and our development depend on how we embrace this education.
The chairman of the board is making a commitment which to many watchers must go beyond double talk for populist projection, especially not on a matter as serious as out-of-school children in the FCT.
Abuja is supposed to be a model where every other state will look at and follow suit. But unfortunately, most states are even better than Abuja when it comes to issue of delivering quality, inclusive education. Go around, go to Buhari, go to all the area councils, even in the metropolis, there is no infrastructure. Despite states, despite FCT assessing the UBE fund, despite that the UBEC is at the national level, they are assessing the funding, but there's a lot of challenges. I can see that we have not gotten it right. And although it's not late for us to make amends, but the earlier we start putting education as a priority, the better for us.
Truth is, if a little boy would follow a truck, possibly to bring in cushions from a remote area, and he sees buildings, he sees cars and all of that, if he is used to either begging or sleeping on the streets and all of that, it looks like I could get better from what I am doing. So a lot of the influx of the children you find here, some of them find their way into the city. Some of them are either brought in on possibly religious education and all of, and the moment they get to a certain point, they run away from the teachers. There might be some extent of some moral hold that the teachers may have on them, a lot of them. But the moment they begin to grow strong on their own, defend themselves when it comes to physical fight, fend for food on their own, a lot of them usually run away. And the influx into the city has a lot of consequences. One, it is a moral burden on the conscience. Two, if there are criminal influences on them, they would easily fall for it because there isn't anybody to curtail all of those things. And then, of course, it will constitute a nuisance. Much as it pains, it aches the heart.
One, I think there has to be a legislation. We have to criminalize the issue of out of school children. We have to introduce measures that will compel parents to enlist their children into school. And because, first of all, we have to understand, it's not government responsibility how your child grows. It's not government responsibility how your child school. That is your personal responsibility. When you get married, that's your personal responsibility. Some hide under religion. In Islam, there are conditions for you to get married. If you cannot be able to take responsibility of your children, Islam discourages you from, in fact, marrying. Not to talk of procreating children. So we shouldn't be hiding under the list of children, religion. The government should be very serious up and doing. We must introduce legislation that would punish and serve as a deterrent for those parents that are irresponsible.
And what I think we need to do is to address the situation from the root causes. And also I usually talk about a systemic change to address the out-of-school situation in Nigeria. That is mean reinvesting and redirecting resources to the rural community. I believe seriously that we have a lot of deficit in terms of access to education, especially in the rural communities, because the lack of access to education facility at the rural community is one of the major drivers that is usually overlooked, in issue of out-of-school children that we talk about. Because when there's lack of access to education facilities at the rural community, it becomes one of the driving factors that move children to the city centers where they get exposed, where we see them on the street and not in school. So I think we need to invest, but invest right by adopting a system change approach that is looking from the root cause of why these children are not in school and addressing it. Through that way, I believe we can be able to address the situation in a more sustainable manner.
Education is fundamental. And the only platform, the only activities that guarantees a safer tomorrow for all of us, the only activities that guarantees societal or national development is nothing but through the classrooms. To reduce incidences of insurgency, kidnappings, the fastest way to address them is to ensure that we entrench, we enforce our walls to go back to classrooms. And sanctions should be meted out to any parent that deprive his or her walls from attending free and compulsory basic education, because it is their right. It's never a privilege. And I think if we can go and ensure that we give emphasis to our education, I think our society will be free, will be entangled from it's going to be disentangled from activities of miscreants out of society, because when a child is being educated, a lot of things, we are not only educating them on books aspect, but also doctoring, tailoring their conscience so that they can be a responsible citizen of the country.
The generational risks are high for a future thrown into the hands of today's out-of-school children. It is a risk the FCT nor the rest of Nigeria cannot afford. As such, for a more sustainable and developed society, it is imperative to provide support for vulnerable and at-risk families, invest in alternative learning options, and support organizations working with vulnerable children with the singular goal of putting and keeping them in school. All children, no matter where they live or what the circumstances, have the right to quality education.
AD4 TV Radio, we focus on education with emphasis on research and innovation, science and technology, women and girl child education, children, health, youth and sports, socio-political and economic reforms, security, environment, entrepreneurship, and entertainment. We'll give you information at your fingertips. Learn on the go. Follow AD4 TV Radio on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. AD4 TV Radio, reliable and credible.
We love you, AD4 TV Radio.